Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Esri Australia's education program and the first of 3 onboarding webinars. This onboarding webinar will focus on setting up your school's account and inviting users to that account. Can I just get somebody who is in the attendance chat just to write in a question saying that they can hear me and confirm that for me before I continue? Just in the question box. Awesome. Thanks, Grant. Appreciate it. With that said, I know that we as teachers are often some of the most time poor people, so we'll just jump straight into it and hopefully be done a little bit early so that you can get on with your afternoons. My sole purpose for existing at Esri Australia is to be a point of contact and a point of support for teachers and students. So never feel like you're encroaching on my time or you're being a hassle to me. The best part of my role is supporting teachers and supporting schools in their journey, their adoption, and their engagement with ArcGIS. In addition to that, my background is that I'm a qualified teacher in Queensland. My particular subject areas were actually senior history and English. However, we all know that if you're a history teacher, you're also a geography teacher, and hence I've taught junior geography along the way and have, I think, a firm grasp on at least Queensland's senior geography syllabus as well. If at any time you want to go back and go through what we call a story map, which is what this presentation is on, you can actually access that story map or record that story map with this URL, and that will take you there. Otherwise, let me briefly explain what our professional learning journey is, our onboarding journey, and then we'll jump into looking at some ArcGIS online applications and how to get started with your account. So the onboarding journey is essentially the duration of a term, 10 weeks. And in those 10 weeks, we look to equip new schools, new teachers like yourself, with an understanding of ArcGIS and the skills needed to use it. The journey includes weekly emails containing links to professional development resources and invitations to attend 3 onboarding webinars. You may be aware or you might not be aware just yet, but we do offer other webinars as a part of our education program. The 3 that you'll be invited to in these weekly emails are specifically for new schools. So with that in mind, what is an overview of, actually I will touch on this really quickly. I alluded to it before. I know that teachers are quite under-resourced when it comes to time, and you might feel that these weekly emails become a little bit too much by the way of keeping up with learning about ArcGIS and you know, accessing the PD resources, watching video tutorials, etc. That's fine. Not necessarily expecting teachers to engage every week, but it might be a smart idea to create a separate folder in your Outlook and just drag those emails in so that you can access those links at a later time that might be a bit more suitable for you. So what is GIS? I'm not actually going to show this video today. Unfortunately, the webinar platform doesn't allow video audio to come through. But again, if you access this story map, you'll be able to watch it with the sound. But essentially what GIS is, it's an acronym, and the G stands for geographic, referring to the location component of this technology. In other words, everything in GIS is referenced to real-world coordinates, addresses, or places. This geographic data can relate to either point data, line data, or polygon data. The I stands for information, and it refers to the spatial data or the feature layers that we either create, view, or manipulate on our digital map. And the S stands for system, and essentially ArcGIS is our system, our geospatial technology that allows us to view that geographic, that spatial data. So what GIS applications are available to you with this program? There are actually a ton of them, but to avoid overwhelming you so early, there's 3 that I want to point out from the get-go. And these are what I call the flagship applications most useful for schools. So the first one is ArcGIS Online. And some of you, if you have already set up your ArcGIS account, will have had some kind of engagement with this platform. But ArcGIS Online allows users to create interactive maps and add feature layers. Feature layers is another, I guess, word for data layers. Users are able to import their own data, style it, analyze it, manipulate it to identify patterns and anomalies. And ArcGIS Online is a cloud-based application, meaning that no software downloads are necessary. I know that that's a big one for schools, especially the IT stuff usually go woohoo. All that we really require is an internet connection, and you're good to go. The application's simple to navigate, making it an attractive option for teachers and students. And I'll just point out, I'm just going to jump over to my ArcGIS platform, and I'll just show you an example of a map. Some of this might seem a bit familiar to you, others it might be widely different to what you're expecting. I'm just going to open up. Hopefully this is a good example. Water availability. So this is a map I created for Year 7 Geography, water in the world. And if I open up the map, might take a moment to load, but you'll see my feature layers begin to appear here. And this is quite a basic map, but if I turn some of these feature layers on, I've got total annual precipitation. Can turn that one on. Global surface water, so it's appearing in blue. I've found the major aquifers of the world, and we can click on these as well to engage further with them. Sea ice cover, and you'll notice I'm not actually, it appears up here, but it's actually a temporal piece of data as well. So if I press the play button, that sea ice cover changes over time. So this is what we're talking about when we're talking about ArcGIS Online. It's essentially the digital mapping cloud-based software cloud-based application that we use. Survey 123 is our second application that I'd like to point out. It's a field application, and it's designed to support the collection of data in the field. It's really great and really simple and intuitive to use and to build and to create your own surveys. I often encourage teachers who are looking for a place to begin with field work and with geospatial technology to start this one in Year 7 with their place and livability unit. So users can share their own survey. So you as a teacher can design and build a survey and share that with your class, and your class goes out into the field after scanning it on their phone with a QR code and essentially fills out that survey collecting data in the field. Great thing is it's free to download onto tablets and smartphones. So even if you're not allowed to use phones at school, hopefully your school has some iPads that they can make use of. And even if there's no internet connection, this is the great thing about it. Even if there is no internet connection, you can actually still complete the survey. You can download it onto your phone, complete the survey, and then the next time you're in some kind of Wi-Fi or internet connection, you can upload those survey results too. So really useful for not just school, I guess, incursions when it comes to field work, but also when you get to the senior levels and you're visiting something like Stradbroke Island, for instance. And the last one, this is perhaps my favorite, probably a little bit because my teaching area is probably first history rather than geography, but story maps. This is my favorite line. It's like a PowerPoint, but better. And hopefully you get a bit of a feel for that as we scroll through this, but it's just a great way to communicate some kind of story, some kind of narrative, some kind of subject content. I know that some schools have been using it for their students to deliver their reports, their assessment reports, their assessment field reports in. It's a really great tool because it allows you to combine text, some of the maps you might create in ArcGIS Online, and other visual media like videos and images all in the one place. And I can actually engage with those maps. I could bring this map in to this story map and engage with it like I was on the other side. So I'm a huge fan of story maps, and there are a couple of really cool ones out there, a couple of cool ones that I've created too. And if you're familiar with our learning materials, hopefully you've come across a couple of them. All right, let's jump into the purpose of today's webinar, which is looking at setting up our school account, and then later we'll look at inviting users. And I'm not gonna, unfortunately, I can't demonstrate the process for you because Esri is a little bit understandably hesitant about giving me or setting me up with a new license, a new order every time I run one of these onboarding webinars. But essentially, you will have received an email that looks like this. And it contains your activation link and your instructions. Some of you that I've been working with told me or asked me to forward this on to your IT team. And so if you haven't received this, it might be a good idea to check with your IT team, as they may have. But for others of you, you're responsible for this process in your school. And I can guarantee that everyone has received this as of last Thursday. So if you've missed it, maybe just go back through and look for an email from Esri Australia. But essentially, the 3 steps are outlined really clearly for us. And it's a matter of following the bouncing ball, as I like to say. Need to essentially click on the activation code as highlighted in the picture, create a new ArcGIS Online account, activate that account, otherwise known as a subscription, and then link your organization account to My Esri. And this email may have changed slightly since I delivered the first onboarding webinar last year, but in essence, the process is the same. We've designed it to be fairly straightforward, and all you need to do is follow the bouncing ball. My encouragement would be to get on to that process quickly. I've found through my experience at Esri Australia, when we start to see issues or teachers reach out going, I'm having some troubles with my account, when I go to look it up on our side of things, the biggest issue usually a lot of the time is that the activation email was never opened and acted upon. And they're wondering why they can't get into their accounts because, well, we haven't activated it in the first place. So yeah, my encouragement would be to get onto this activation process quickly. It does only take about 20 minutes, and that will allow you to hopefully get into the swing of things with ArcGIS, as well as keep up with these weekly emails that I will be sending. If you have 10 weeks worth of emails at the end of an onboarding journey, it can seem quite a lot more daunting to get started with ArcGIS. Whereas if you do find some kind of time each week to just play around a little bit, and then attend some of the webinars as well that we have coming up, hopefully you'll feel much more comfortable with not just using it, but finding a way to implement it into your school's curriculum. So with that said, the third part is, I guess the third step is linking that ArcGIS account to your My Esri. And I've had this question plenty of times before. Even when I was a teacher, I was a little bit questionable as to why I needed My Esri. Essentially, it's a one-stop shop that allows you to manage all aspects of your ArcGIS subscription, your school subscription with Esri Australia. It helps you explore what licensing and download options are available to you. So whilst most things are cloud-based, there are options to download some geospatial technology software onto computers. And some schools do decide to do that. So this is a place you can look at those downloads available to you. You can also keep track of your support cases and access training. I'm just going to show us, again, you could click on this if you had the story map open, but I'm going to just show you what My Esri looks like from my side. So once you log into My Esri, you'll notice that you'll use the same ArcGIS login credentials as you do to log into ArcGIS Online, but it's a different website. This is a place where you can have a look at it's essentially an administrative site. You as an administrator can look at every aspect of your account. And I like to start off by showing off the dashboard. Evidently, we have an overview page. Welcome to Esri, getting started in my Esri. So some really useful video, a really useful video to just find a place to get started. But my biggest thing is I'm a huge fan of the common questions section, where we've got all of these different types of categories, and I can look, if I click on any of them, it comes up with a range of questions that we've essentially designed to hopefully help you get connected or find an answer. For instance, what is the purpose of my Esri? And you'll see that I've pretty much ripped this answer off in my story map. My Esri is a single location where you can manage all aspects of your relationship with Esri. So it's really good, a good place to maybe go before feeling like, oh, I don't know where to go, or I need to reach out to Jake and the education team. Again, more than happy to help, but I know that some people do like to have a go on their own before reaching out for help. So the common questions is a really good place to start. If I head across the tabs at the top, my profile essentially just allows me to put in some details about myself, set my email settings, set my language settings, etc. My organization is where you can see everything about your subscription. So if I was to click on users, I can see a list of all the users in my organization. Right now we're in Esri Australia's organization, so there's what we would expect to be, quite a few users. If I go to licensing, I can see all of my licensing here. I'm not going to go too much into it. Downloads available to me as a user or to my students that I might want to make available to them. So if I wanted to download ArcGIS Pro, which is a desktop software, I would just click on the View Downloads button and it would give me the option to download that onto my computer. And then lastly, your technical support overview. So it helps you keep track of all of the cases that you might have with our technical support team. At the moment, Esri Australia seems to have 36 open, and we've closed 1,964. So really, it's just an administrative place to look after your account, to get information on your account, to manage your downloads, but still a useful place. You will also have another tab here called Training. I don't have access to that in the Esri Australia My Esri, but I know that you as administrators will have an extra tab there saying training, and you can access some additional training resources through that as well. However, I'll point out an appropriate place to go for probably training resources that are a bit more directed at teachers. Before I move on so far, I know that's really quick and I unfortunately can't demonstrate the process of setting it up for you. But if you did have any questions before we moved on to the second part, feel free to chuck them into the question box and I'd be more than happy to answer them now before we keep going. Alternatively, I'll still be able to answer them at the end. So I'll just give you 30 seconds, and if I don't see anything come through, that's fine. I'll just keep on going. Awesome. All right, inviting users to your organization. This is perhaps probably, I guess, the most useful part of today's webinar. How do we invite fellow teachers, but also students to the ArcGIS subscription? So the GIS for Schools license allows us to have up to 2,000 users to your organization, which is just another word for school. You can have a combination of teachers, of students, of your IT team. You can have other non-teaching staff, maybe your librarian team at school might find this interesting and might deliver something to students as well. And my encouragement would be that, hey, make sure you keep on top of your users as last year's cohort leaves. If you delete them as users, then you can free up that a number of those 2,000 users again for the incoming year 7s or the incoming grade to make use of. So just always making sure that you monitor how many users are in your organization, and you clean it up after the conclusion of each year. Although it's very rare that I see a school with all 2,000 users taken up. But the great thing about it is we do have what we're about to go through. You can feel free to follow along at home if you have 2 monitors in front of you. Otherwise, if you feel like you're going to miss something, that's all right. We've got a video tutorial and a step-by-step guide that you can follow at home, but we're going to give it a try. So the first thing we're going to do in a second is we're going to use this CSV file. So I'll be coming back to that, but I want to show you where to go in ArcGIS Online. I should start at home actually. So upon logging into ArcGIS Online, once you've activated your subscription, you'll land on the home screen. Your home screen is going to look a little bit different to mine. It might just have your school's name in big writing with some kind of nice background. But from here, if you're an administrator, you'll be able to see this organization tab. You want to click on that. And from here, it's a matter of going over to our members. So I guess this is a bit of a dashboard, an overview of your license. It shows you how many licenses you've got, how many members are on your subscription, your credit usage over the last 30 days or the last 24 hours. You'll have 200,000 here. Essentially, credit usage is like storage space on a laptop. The more maps you've got saved, the more surveys you've made, the more some things consume analytics. Like creating a choropleth map, for instance, will consume an analytic. The more of that stuff that you do, the more credits you will consume. 200,000 credits is an awful lot. I've never seen a school so much as make a dent in it. So don't feel like you need to be precious about protecting them. You don't want to delete students' work just to feel like you're freeing up space with your credit usage. If it's quality work, if it's training work, leave it there. I've never seen a school make a dent in the 200,000. If you are running low in years come, all you got to do is really just email me anyway, and I'll put in an order to Esri for you, and we'll top it up for you as well. But from here, we want to go from overview to members. And we can see all of our members in here. You'll notice that other than myself at the top, I have a lot of training users in here for when I go and do site visits for schools or for teachers. They can log in there and have a play around on my account. But where we want to go today is we want to invite members in the top left corner. And there's a couple of options for us. Depending on how you wish to invite your members, you might add members without sending invitations, which means an email isn't sent to them. You'll have to inform them of their username and password in class. Sometimes that's not necessarily a bad thing. I guess depending on your clientele, sometimes being there in class with them might be the most appropriate way to help them all get set up at the same time. However, this one is probably my favorite, add members and notify them via email. So they get the link to I guess, log in for the first time, and then upon logging in for the first time, they'll be asked to create their own password. So we're going to go with this one today, but essentially they're the same thing. The only difference is you have to tell them their username and password in a classroom if you choose option 1. So I'm going to select option 2 and I'm going to click next. And if I was to choose new member, that means I can only add 1 member at a time, which if I have a class of 30 is going to get really, really irksome, really time consuming. So I'm actually going to click new members from a file, which does require a little bit of work beforehand, but will save time in the long run. And you'll notice that I can drag a file in or browse for a file on my computer, providing that it's in a CSV format. So that's where I'm going to head back to story maps really quickly, and I've created a template for us to work from. So I'm going to click that link and hopefully it will load. There we go. Just going to download that spreadsheet and open it and drag it across. And you'll see that it's partially filled out. And the reason it's partially filled out is so that if you decide to use this a little bit later, you've got a bit of an understanding of what we're trying to do here. So essentially we need to have these seven fields across the top: email, first name, last name, username, password, user type, and role. It does not matter what order they are in. And I'll explain why we need those seven fields. So if I head back to ArcGIS Online, you'll see 6 of them. Maybe did I count wrong? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, I've got 6 and a password. So you'll see these 6 fields here. We'll need a 7th because we're adding a password for them, but we need these fields here. So I've got them in my spreadsheet, and it's just a matter of essentially completing this for the students that you want to add. So for today, we will remove this stuff in just a second, but let's add a couple of dummy emails. Let's go with, hopefully these aren't anyone's real ones, Harrison Moss at eq.edu.au. And I'm just familiar with the Education Queensland email address, which is why I've done that. And I'm simply just entering all the data in for them. And I'll do another one. Let's set Stephanie Rice up with one today at eq.edu.au again. Stephanie Rice. And I always like to keep my usernames fairly consistent and simple to remember. Depending on your school, it might look a little bit more like, I guess, the email address itself. JLove204 could be a suitable username as well. But essentially it's about adding their email, adding their first and last name and a username, and then having a password. When it comes to user type and role, I always tell everyone to set up with GIS Professional Advanced. That just gives students and teachers essentially the most freedom, the most amount of tools to make use of the ArcGIS platform effectively. So they can essentially do everything you can, just without some extra teacher privileges. The same encouragement is to add everyone as a publisher. We would normally add teachers as administrators. However, you can't add them straight in as an administrator. So even if you were adding a teacher in, you would still add them in as a publisher, and you will have to go back through once they're added in, and I'll show you how to do that in a second, and physically change that from publisher to administrator. Just going to pop my question box open. Can it be that a username can be unavailable because it already exists somewhere in the application, perhaps another organization? A good question. It's not going to be unavailable because it exists in another organization necessarily, but it can be unavailable if it doesn't meet certain requirements. So that now that I actually think about it, there's probably a reason that I haven't put JLove204 in as my username. I think I might have tried that when I first got to Esri Australia, and it was too short or it didn't fulfill some kind of requirement. So I've swapped that to Jake.Lovejoy, which did work when I tested that in the past. So it might be a little bit of a testing, if you will. But yeah, there's not really any limitations. And I guess my advice really is to go with first and last name anyway, separated by a full stop or an underscore or something like that. You're not going to have any issues. You're not going to really have any repeat cases, if you will. Maybe the very, very, very occasional exception. Hopefully that answered the question. I will point out this example down here as well. I know that some schools are concerned about privacy and where this information is being stored. And I know that schools do have to often, I'm not sure about all schools, but I know that some schools definitely have to fill out some kind of security questionnaire or security risk questionnaire for their school, which can be, if you get your IT staff on board, then they can look after that for you. But if privacy is a concern at the school, there's no reason that you can't just, you don't even have to put in a real email. You could have chosen, if we go back to our internet and we go, just give me a second, if we go back to this first option, if we add members without sending invitations, we can put in dummy email addresses anyway. So if you're concerned about privacy, you would choose this one, and we can put in fake email addresses that don't disclose any private information. Likewise, you can put in the first name as student, the last name as 1, for instance, and give them a username of student 001. And therefore, there's no privacy concerns about what kind of personal data or personal information is being kept on ArcGIS servers. So that's another way to go around it, depending on how your school approaches its privacy and stays consistent with Australian privacy laws. But for today, I'm going to delete these 5 boxes. I'm also going to delete my example ones here. I'm just going to add 2 as an example today. So I need to make sure I resave this. I'm going to save it somewhere I can drag it in just a second. And I might just make it easy for myself to find onboarding. And I'm going to save it in my OneDrive. And once I've finished with my template, all I need to do is close it. I'm going to click next again on this and add new members from file. And I'm going to browse for that CSV file, which will be in here somewhere. No, I've lost it already. I'm gonna have to just quickly see what adding teachers. Here we go. So this will be the one, and if I click open, I've got my 2 members there, and if I've fulfilled the required fields, they'll all show up as green ticks. So if I've missed a field for some reason, it'll either show up as yellow, which means there's something wrong with it, or red, which means that it's non-existent. So something to be aware of there. But I've checked all those boxes, so I can click next. I can see that Stephanie Rice and Harrison Moss are going to be added in this process. So I'm going to click next. And from here, I can start to manage some extra add-on licenses. So it might be that once I get a bit of familiar with the software, I want to give them some extra licenses. For instance, we might be using ArcGIS Urban, which is essentially I guess a city planning, 3D city planning kind of model or software that students can access and use. But you'll notice that there's not 2,000 available licenses, so you just got to be a bit more selective with how you're providing them to students. But by rule of thumb, unless I know students are going to be accessing these add-on licenses, I don't really ever manage them or put any extras on, because what they get in their base, I guess their base account is more than enough for 99% of schools. It might be that if I have existing groups, I might want those students to be placed into those groups straight away. For example, Mr. Smith's Year 11 Geography class, if I've just added 6 new students for Year 11 Geography, I might put them straight into a group if I've created a group. Do I want them to have Esri access? So do I want them to be able to access my Esri? No. Why? Because that's the administrative side of my account. I don't want students accessing this information. So when it comes to students, I'm not going to give them access to my Esri. If I was adding my IT staff, then it might be a really good idea to enable that box so that they can take over administration of the account for me. I'm going to set a credit allocation. So for teachers, I never set an allocated limit. They should be able to use as many credits as they want. Why? Because they'll probably be creating resources for their classes, surveys for their assessment pieces, etc. I don't want to limit how much credit they have. When it comes to students, I usually just stick with the 25. And if the student's running low, it's really simple to essentially give them some more credits, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second. But again, this is something that we shouldn't worry about too much. Credits is not like money. You won't run out of it, and your students won't run out of it either, so don't worry about it too much. Some important settings down the bottom. When you're adding students, it's really important that you think about the profile visibility. So you don't want to be selecting everyone. That means people from other ArcGIS organizations will be able to essentially access not their account, but access an overview of their account, like essentially a bio page of their basic information that's stored in here. So by clicking organization, it means that only members from your school, your ArcGIS school account, can see that information and see that profile. Language, again, English is fine. However, number and date format, let's go with Australia, and you can actually choose where you want them to start when they log in each time. So home might be the most suitable. Maybe content is the most suitable place for them to start. So they're essentially opening up straight into any saved material they have on here. It might be that you want them to start up in groups. Again, Mr. Year 11's, Mr. Smith, sorry, Year 11 geography class, that might be the first thing you want them to see. I usually just leave it as home because it's fairly easy to navigate between the different areas. And I'm going to click next. Essentially, it gives me a bit of an overview, and I can personalize the email message that I send my students. For some students, it might be do not delete at the start of it or something like that, or important needs to be done by X date. But you can personalize that message, and then once you send it off, it'll contain a link for them to click on and organize the activation of their user account. And I'm going to, once I'm happy with all of this, I'm going to add members. And we'll see up in the top corner, members added 2. And if I scroll down, I can see Stephanie Rice and Harrison Moss. Now, if Harrison Moss was a teacher at my school, this is when I would then change them to administrator. So I'd head over to publisher and I'd click on the drop down and I would make them an administrator there, which would then give them the ability to access this organization bar and invite members, view other people's resources. So Harrison could now essentially click on my name in the members box, see that I have 485 items created and view them. Another member is not going to have, a publisher is not going to have those functions and that oversight over other people's or over other users' items and accounts. The most important thing is that they can't access this page where they can essentially do things like delete members or reset passwords. So yeah, administrator is really only reserved for either IT staff or teachers. I will mention while I'm here that, again, clicking on this more options button is where we can manage credits. So if a student was getting low for whatever reason, I can essentially top that up by putting in a new number and then allocating that to them. But otherwise, that's the process of adding teachers and students. And it's just a matter of them logging in. Whilst I'm here, I might actually delete these members because they are not real. And it'll be, I'll forget otherwise. Yep, there we go. Otherwise, that's the process of adding and inviting members to your organization. So in closing, I guess now is a good time to prompt you that if you did have any questions, to chuck them into that question box and I'll get to them shortly. But whilst I wait for a couple of questions to come through, I will just explain the resources available to you as teachers and as students as well. I'm not a fan of tooting my own horn, and this is definitely not what I'm trying to do here, but the Esri Australia education site is a wonderful resource for students and for teachers. So the link's there, and I'll share this story map, this presentations link again to make sure that you've got it before I close it. But on this schools page, you can access, different types of news cards or resources that we often put up. So last Christmas, we created a bit of a Christmas spatial activity where students were required to go on a hunt around Australia and find hints to five students' homes so that Santa could deliver their presents. But more importantly, we've got these three buttons at the top. Our e-newsletter subscription, it's only a monthly e-newsletter, and it's not designed to sell you anything. Realistically, all that we share in the e-newsletter is, hey, we're making you aware of new learning materials that have gone up, any new PD resources or upcoming webinars, or any news that's directly related to essentially making your job easier in your adoption and engagement with ArcGIS. So don't worry about us trying to bog your email down. This e-newsletter is only once a term, and you only receive it if you do sign up for it. But otherwise, the learning materials and the professional developments are what makes this website so great. So you can search by a range of year levels. Let's go with year 8. You can search by a range of subjects. Now, I will be quite frank. My background in mathematics and science is not strong, so there's not a ton of resources for these two subjects. But for geography and history, there's quite a few. So if we click on geography, we can actually see that there's 6 for year 8, looking at things that are directly related to the curriculum. So beach management strategies in this case on the Gold Coast beaches, hotspots in the Hawaiian Islands, volcanoes, plate boundaries, how mountains are made. And these all use interactive maps that we've created. Comes with questions, essentially if I click on one, why not? Comes with a lesson plan attached to it. So you can adapt that lesson plan as you need, but there's questions in there for students to answer. For instance, what is the name of Australia's largest mountain range? And at the top of each lesson plan is a link to that particular mapping resource. So if I click on that, it'll open up a map. And if we bear with it, we can, either as students or as teachers, engage with the feature layers on the left-hand side, but also click on, this mountain range here, the Great Dividing Range, which would give students an answer to that question asked in the lesson plan. So there's a ton of lesson plans and learning materials on this page, but also a professional development page has a lot of different kinds of categories that you might come across, or different kind of applications that you might decide you want to use down the track. And each one essentially has video tutorial or a guide if you prefer to work through a PDF copy, teaching you how to do whatever it is that focuses on. In this case, how do you add layers into ArcGIS Online on a map? And if we scroll down a bit further, you'll see that at the moment, you're all currently sitting in this webinar with me, getting started with the GIS for Schools program, and that these two are also onboarding webinars coming up. But these three are webinars that are separate to the onboarding process. So these are, I guess, this term we're running 3 webinars that are all looking at applications that you could use for fieldwork, to support fieldwork. So these aren't necessarily included or won't be referenced in the onboarding program itself, but you're more than welcome to register for them and learn a little bit more about it. But yeah, again, I guess I just want to drive home the fact that the school's website is a really great resource for learning materials and for, I guess, self-help professional development. If I open up the questions box really quickly, I've got a couple of questions. Does the video recording on this include how to change publisher to administrator by chance? Awesome. I believe I did show that, but essentially just to recap really quickly, once I've added my members, I'm still in the members tab up here, but all I need to do is go across to the relevant member and change from publisher to administrator. And that will give a teacher those administrative privileges. Another question. This is probably a silly question. No such thing. I'm pretty sure we tell our students that. Does a school have to pay for the license? Nicole, great question. Absolutely not. This is probably the real reason I accepted this job. It was completely free, and it's I guess Esri Australia's community outreach kind of arm of the organisation. It's completely free for Australian schools. That includes access to the webinars, access to myself either via email or a phone call, or even it might be that we organise some kind of virtual Teams meeting or Zoom meeting to upskill some staff or yourself, or brainstorm some kind of, hey, how could I make use of this in this assessment piece? It's all free. Yeah, don't ever feel like you need to ask that question as to what it's going to cost. Yeah, Esri, my salary and everything that I do with my job is to support teachers free of charge. Otherwise, I don't see any other questions coming through, which means that you guys are all professionals already, which is fantastic to hear. But I will finish with just reasserting that, hey, if you do need further assistance, or you do want to chat about something in the coming weeks when you do get a bit more familiar with what's available to you, feel free again to reach out. You can email education@esriaustralia.com.au. I directly monitor that email address and all the emails that come through to it. So you're more than welcome to reach out at any time, and from there I can give you my work phone number and whatnot. And just before I do end, I will just give everyone a last chance to copy that this presentation's URL down, either on a piece of paper or on your computer, because once I hit end on this webinar, it'll shut you all out straight away. So https://arcg.is/1y capital T, capital H, capital W, capital H. Otherwise, like I promised, we're done a little bit early today. I'm sure that the first week of school has been a bit hectic for you all. So keep fighting the good fight, and thank you for participating in today's webinar. Have a great afternoon. Bye.